When an EF2 tornado ripped through Rome this summer, a city symbol took a big hit.
6 months later, renovations for the iconic B-52 bomber are set for takeoff.
70 years. That's how long the legendary B-52 Stratofortress has been in service. Just let that sink in. This bomber was built to counter the Soviet Union, and yet, decades later, it's still flying, still dominating. Now, it's about to get the biggest upgrade of its lifetime. Yes, the US Air Force isn't just keeping this Cold War warrior in the sky, it's prepping it to fly for a full century. Think about that. A bomber designed in the 1950s could outlive even the stealthy B-2 and maybe even rival the cutting-edge B-21 Raider. How is that even possible? What secret upgrades are making this old warbird deadlier than ever? Well, strap in because we're about to break down how the B-52 is defying time, why the Pentagon is doubling down on this iconic bomber, and what these upgrades mean for the future of aerial warfare. Let's dive in. The B-52 enduring legacy. 70 years ago, when the B-52 Stratofortress first roared into the skies, no one, not even the engineers who designed it, could have predicted what it would become. The year was 1952. The Cold War was in full swing, and the US needed a long-range nuclear bomber that could strike deep into Soviet territory. Boeing, an American multinational corporation that designs, manufactures, and sells airplanes, rotorcraft, rockets, satellites, and missiles worldwide, came to their rescue. The B-52 became a symbol of American air power. Fast forward to today, and it's still flying. And now, the US Air Force is testing upgrades to push its lifespan past a full century. Can you believe these people? But how? Well, let's break it down. The B-52 was born in the atomic age and was designed for one purpose: deterrence. It needed to fly fast and far and carry enough firepower to make any enemy think twice. The Soviet Union had just tested its first nuclear bomb in 1949, and the US military knew it needed something bigger, better, and bolder than anything before. That's how the Stratofortress was born. From the start, the B-52 shattered expectations. In 1957, it set the record for the first non-stop, around-the-world flight on jet power, proving its range and reliability. And that wasn't just a publicity stunt. This aircraft could genuinely reach anywhere on the planet with aerial refueling. That's global dominance right there. Now, you might think that a bomber designed in the 1950s would be hopelessly outdated by now, right? But here's the secret to the B-52's incredible longevity: adaptability. Unlike many of its Cold War counterparts, the B-47, the B-58 Hustler, and even the B-1 in some ways, the B-52 never became obsolete. Instead, it evolved. During the Vietnam War, it wasn't only dropping nukes, it was raining down conventional bombs in high-altitude carpet bombing missions. In the Gulf War, it was launching precision-guided missiles from hundreds of miles away. In the 21st century, it has become a smart weapons platform capable of carrying modern cruise missiles, guided bombs, and even hypersonic weapons. But here's the real kicker. Despite being older than the internet, the moon landing, and the entire stealth aircraft era, the B-52 is still the backbone of the US bomber fleet. The Air Force still relies on it more than the sleek B-1 Lancer and even the high-tech B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. Why? Well, it's simple. Reliability, cost-effectiveness, pure brute power. The B-52 can carry more weapons than any other bomber in service and has the highest mission readiness rate of them all. And now, with a massive re-engineering project underway, new radar systems, new avionics, and brand new Rolls-Royce engines, the US is making sure this beast stays in the skies well into the 2050s, 2060s, and beyond. But how did we even get here? How did a bomber designed in the early Cold War become the backbone of America's air power nearly a century later? Well, to understand that, we have to go back to where it all started, a time when war wasn't just about who could reach the enemy first, who could strike hardest, and who could hold the ultimate advantage in the nuclear age. From concept to Cold War icon. By the end of World War II, the world had entered a new era of warfare. This time, The war was defined by long-range strategic bombers and the looming threat of nuclear conflict. The US had dominated the skies during the war with the B-17 Flying Fortress and the B-29 Superfortress. But as the Soviet Union emerged as America's next big rival, the Pentagon needed something even more powerful. That is when the race for the next-generation bomber began. In 1945, the US Air Force set out its requirements: a bomber that could fly at least 300 miles per hour at 34,000 feet, carry a heavy payload, and travel up to 5,000 miles without refueling. The goal? To strike deep into Soviet territory from bases in the US. This was because, at the time, there were no overseas bases close enough for a direct attack. The aircraft needed to be big, fast, and deadly. That's when two companies, Boeing and Convair, stepped up to the challenge. Convair had the B-36 Peacemaker, a massive six-engine bomber with an insane 230-foot wingspan, but it was slow and struggled with high-altitude flight. Boeing, on the other hand, was working on something different. Theirs was an aircraft that would change air power forever. But here's the twist. The B-52 almost didn't happen. Initially, Boeing's plan wasn't for a jet-powered bomber at all. The company first designed a turboprop aircraft, a sleek, high-winged bomber with a long fuselage. The military, however, wasn't convinced. Generals argued back and forth about whether the future of aviation was in turbojets or turboprops. Some believed that jet engines consumed too much fuel and weren't ready for long-range bombing missions. Others, like General Curtis LeMay, pushed for pure jet power, arguing that range issues could be solved later. So, in 1948, Boeing went back to the drawing board. And where did they do it? Not in a high-tech lab, not in some secret government facility, but in a hotel room in Dayton, Ohio. Yes, a hotel room. Engineers George Scherer, Art Carlson, Vaughn Blumenthal, Maynard Pennell, and Bob Withington gathered supplies from a local hobby shop and built a small balsa wood model of what would become the B-52 Stratofortress. They ditched the propellers, redesigned the wings with a 35-degree sweep, and mounted 8 jet engines in 4 underwing pylons. This design would prove to be revolutionary in the coming times. They just didn't know it yet. This was a bomber built for speed, power, and endurance. When presented, the military loved it. In 1951, Boeing rolled out the first full-scale prototype, and on April 15, 1952, the B-52 took its maiden flight. It wasn't just successful, but a game-changer. With a top speed of 650 miles per hour and a range of 8,800 miles, the B-52 instantly became the backbone of America's strategic bombing force. By 1955, it was officially in service, and just 2 years later, it set a world record, completing the first non-stop flight around the world in just 45 hours and 19 minutes. This was a clear message to the world. The US had a bomber that could reach anywhere, anytime. What started as a last-minute redesign in a hotel room became the most iconic strategic bomber in history. The B-52 wasn't just another Cold War weapon. It was a symbol of American air power. Now, here's the twist no one saw coming. The same aircraft that first took flight in 1952 is still flying today. Record-setting performance. When the B-52 took to the skies for the first time in 1952, no one could have predicted that it could accomplish as much as it did. Nevertheless, it lasts for this long. This bomber wasn't just built to fly missions, it was built to rewrite history, and that's exactly what it did. By 1957, just 2 years after officially entering service, the B-52 made headlines when it accomplished a non-stop flight around the world. 3 of these bombers took off, flying at an average speed of 525 miles per hour, and covered a staggering 24,325 miles in just 45 hours and 19 minutes. That's right. While most aircraft at the time struggled with range limitations, the B-52 circled the entire planet in less than 2 days. This move alone proved what the Soviet Union feared. The US Air Force had accomplished something that was but a dream to other military troops, and that's global reach and power. However, it didn't stop there. In 1962, the B-52D variant broke another record, this time for the longest flight without refueling. The bomber took off from Kadena Air Base in Japan and flew all the way to Torrejón Air Base in Spain. That's 12 and 32 miles, non-stop. No other bomber could even come close to that kind of range. Even today, modern stealth bombers like the B-52 Spirit don't have that kind of endurance. Think about it. This was an aircraft designed before the age of digital avionics, fly-by-wire systems, and satellite navigation, and yet it was beating every expectation the military had. But how? The answer lies in its design. Boeing built the B-52 with raw power, efficiency, and adaptability in mind. They fit in 8 powerful engines to ensure ultimate power. In addition, they added a massive fuel tank which tremendously increased the plane's capacity. Boeing also added a streamlined fuselage, which meant that it could fly further, faster, and higher than any bomber before it. Even after decades of service, the B-52 continued to push its limits. In 1996, during Operation Desert Strike, a pair of B-52 took off from Andersen Air Force Base in Guam and flew a 16,000-mile round-trip mission to hit targets in Iraq. That mission alone took 34 hours, proving once again that the B-52 was a long-range powerhouse. And here's the crazy part. It's still breaking records 70 years later. The US Air Force continues to use it for some of the most demanding missions in modern warfare. Why? Because no other bomber offers this level of range, payload capacity, or reliability. It doesn't just compete with modern aircraft, it outlasts them. But now, things are about to get even more interesting. With the latest round of upgrades, including new engines, advanced radar systems, and enhanced weapons capabilities, the B-52 is preparing to shatter expectations yet again. Could it set another world record? Could it remain America's go-to heavy bomber for another 30 years? The modern B-52. If you told a Cold War-era pilot that the B-52 would still be flying in 2050, they'd probably laugh. Yet, here we are. The US Air Force isn't just keeping the B-52 in service, it's giving it a whole new lease on life. And the question is, why? Why not just build a brand new bomber? Well, let's start with what's left. Of all the B-52 variants built, only the B-52H remains in service. The others, gone, retired. But the H model, still flying strong and, more importantly, still outperforming its successors. That's right, the B-52 has a higher mission readiness rate than the B-1 Lancer, and even the high-tech B-2 Spirit. The B-1 is fast, but it's maintenance-heavy and expensive to operate. The B-2, on the other hand, is stealthy. Sure, but those radar-absorbing materials are a nightmare to maintain, and with each B-2 costing over $2 billion per plane, it's not exactly a cost-effective option. That's where the B-52 shines. It may not be stealthy, but it doesn't need to be. The B-52 has something that no bomber before or after has matched. Its brutal efficiency makes it highly reliable. Let's not forget how affordable it is to maintain. And to top matters, the B-52 can carry more weapons than almost anything else in the Air Force inventory. This is why, even as the B-21 Raider prepares to enter service, the Pentagon isn't rushing to phase out the B-52. It simply does the job too well. And now, it's getting a makeover. The biggest upgrade is its new engines. The B-52's original TF-33 engines have been around since the Kennedy administration, and they're finally being replaced with Rolls-Royce F-130 engines. These engines are quieter, more efficient, and expected to keep the B-52 flying well into the 2050s, and that's just the beginning. A new radar, enhanced avionics, and expanded weapons capabilities mean this old warhorse isn't just staying in service, it's evolving. Think about it. When the B-52 first took flight in 1952, computers were the size of entire rooms. Today, the phone in your pocket is more powerful than what NASA used to land on the moon. And yet, the B-52 is still here. Why? Because it was designed with one core principle: adaptability. It's outlived every aircraft meant to replace it. Fighter jets, bombers, and even entire air forces have come and gone, but the B-52 remains. And with these upgrades, it's proving once again that sometimes the best way forward isn't a new design, it's perfecting an old one. But here's the thing, keeping a legend alive isn't just about nostalgia, it's about making sure it can still dominate the battlefield. And that's exactly what the US Air Force is doing. This isn't just about extending the B-52's life, it's about turning it into something even deadlier. So how do you take a Cold War icon and make it ready for the wars of the future? The $2.6 billion upgrade. Alright, let's talk about something big. No, not just big, but game-changing. The US Air Force is pouring $2.6 billion into modernizing the B-52 Stratofortress. And if you thought this old warhorse was done evolving, think again. This isn't just an upgrade, but it's a transformation. Let's start with the biggest change, which is the engines. The B-52s, Pratt & Whitney TF-33s have been around since the 1960s. That's right, these engines predate the moon's landing. They're inefficient, expensive to maintain, and way past their prime. But then there's the new Rolls-Royce F-130 engines. These aren't just replacements, they're a total revolution in efficiency. We're talking 40% more fuel efficiency, reduced emissions, and greater thrust. And here's the kicker. These engines are expected to last for another 30 years. So when we say the B-52 will hit 100 years of service, we're not kidding. But what's the point of a modernized bomber if it's still relying on the old-school radar? That's why the Air Force is equipping the B-52 with the APG-79 radar system, the same one used on the Super Hornet. It's a massive leap in capability, longer range, enhanced targeting, improved countermeasures. It turns the B-52 into a true 21st century weapons platform. This means better situational awareness, faster target acquisition, and the ability to operate in heavily defended airspace without breaking a sweat. Let's just hope the US never gets the need to use this beast of a plane. Now, let's talk weapons. The B-52 was already a beast when it came to carrying payloads, but now it's going hypersonic. That's right, the Air Force is upgrading the pylons so it can carry and launch next-generation hypersonic missiles. These aren't your average cruise missiles. Hypersonics travel at over 5 times the speed of sound. This means the B-52 won't just be relevant in modern warfare, it will be a nightmare for any adversary. And here's a fun little detail. You know that undernose sensor pod the B-52 has had for decades. It's no longer in use. That bulky, outdated system is being replaced with modern targeting pods. This upgrade streamlines the aircraft's profile and integrates the latest precision-guided weapon technology. It's smarter, faster, and deadlier than ever before. So let's step back for a second. We're looking at a bomber that was designed before color television was a thing, but after this $2.6 billion transformation, it's turning into one of the most advanced aircraft in the US arsenal. And that begs the question, could the B-52 outlast even some of today's modern bombers? Could this legendary aircraft remain a key player well into the 2050s and beyond? Honestly, at this rate, it's looking more and more likely. What do you think? Nuclear capabilities. Alright, let's talk nuclear firepower. Because the B-52 isn't just making a comeback, it's potentially reclaiming its place in America's nuclear arsenal. And if that happens, we could see one of the most legendary bombers in history once again carrying some of the most powerful weapons on the planet. So, how did we get here? Well, back in the Cold War, the B-52 wasn't just a bomber. It was the backbone of America's nuclear deterrent. At its peak, this beast could carry up to 20 nuclear missiles. I am talking about a mix of AGM-69 SRAM short-range attack missiles and AGM-86 ALCMs, air-launched cruise missiles. These weren't just bombs dropped from the belly. These were highly sophisticated, precision-guided nuclear weapons that could strike deep inside enemy territory without the B-52 even getting close to enemy air defenses. But then, everything changed. In 2010, the Air Force made a historic and somewhat controversial decision. They decided that the B-52 would no longer have its nuclear certification. This wasn't because the aircraft was outdated or incapable, but rather due to a shift in US nuclear strategy that prioritized stealth over numbers. The B-52, as powerful as it was, had one major drawback. It wasn't built to be invisible. By the 2000s, advanced air defense systems like Russia's S-400 and China's growing anti-access area denial A2AD networks made it harder for non-stealthy bombers to survive in contested airspace. As a result, the Air Force decided to streamline its nuclear bomber force and place the responsibility solely on the B-2 Spirit, which could evade radar and penetrate deep into enemy territory. Meanwhile, land-based ICBMs and nuclear missile submarines, SSBNs, continued to serve as the other two legs of America's nuclear triad. triad. With the B-2 taking over and the upcoming B-21 Raider in development, the B-52 was officially designated as a conventional-only bomber, still capable of launching massive airstrikes with JDAMs, cruise missiles, and anti-ship weapons, but no longer carrying the world-ending firepower of nuclear warheads. This decision marked the end of an era. The B-52 had carried nuclear weapons for nearly 5 decades, standing on high alert during the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and through decades of deterrence patrols. Now, it was effectively retired from its most strategic role, leaving some to wonder, was this the right call? Now, fast forward to today, and things are shifting again. Congress is pushing for the return of nuclear capabilities to the B-52, and this isn't just some passing debate. The Air Force is already looking at bringing at least 30 B-52s back into the nuclear fold. And the key to all of this? The AGM-181 Long-Range Standoff LRSO missile. This isn't just an upgrade, but it's a whole new level of strategic firepower. The LRSO is a stealthy, long-range cruise missile designed to replace the aging AGM-86. It can fly thousands of miles, evade enemy defenses, and deliver a devastating nuclear strike from well beyond the reach of modern air defense systems. And that means the B-52, despite being a 70-year-old airframe, could become one of the deadliest nuclear platforms in America's arsenal. But here's the big question. How does this compare to the B-21 Raider? The B-21 is supposed to be the future, the next-generation stealth bomber built for deep penetration missions, right? But let's be real, stealth has its limitations. Once an enemy figures out how to detect and track a stealth aircraft, its entire advantage disappears. That's where the B-52's standoff capability comes in. It doesn't need to sneak past defenses, but it can just launch a missile from 1,500 miles away and watch as its target disappears from the map. So, does this mean the B-52 is about to outshine the B-21? Well, not exactly. The B-21 is still crucial for penetrating heavily defended airspace. But here's the thing. The B-52's role in the nuclear triad is looking more relevant than ever. It's cheaper, it can carry more missiles, and with these upgrades, it's becoming a perfect complement to the B-21. And let's not forget the symbolism here. Bringing back nuclear weapons to the B-52 isn't just about firepower, but it's about making a statement. It's a reminder that this bomber, which first flew in 1952, is still a force to be reckoned with. The B-52 has always been a powerhouse, but now it's stepping into an entirely new era of warfare. It's no longer just about carrying more weapons, it's about carrying the fastest, most unstoppable ones ever built. So, what happens when you strap hypersonic missiles onto a bomber that refuses to retire? Hypersonic arsenal. Now, when we talk about real speed, we are not just talking about supersonic jets or high-speed cruise missiles, but hypersonic weapons, the kind that can scream through the atmosphere at more than 5 times the speed of sound. And guess what? The B-52, an aircraft designed back when Elvis Presley was topping the charts, is about to become a hypersonic missile truck. You heard that right. The Air Force is giving the B-52 a serious firepower boost, one that could turn this old warhorse into the most lethal non-stealth bomber in history. And it all starts with the AGM-183A ARRW, or, as it's better known, the Air-Launched Rapid Response Weapon. In March 2024, something big happened over the Pacific. A B-52 launched an AGM-183A ARRW during a test flight near Guam, proving that the Stratofortress wasn't just still relevant, it was stepping into the future of warfare. The ARW is a boost-glide hypersonic missile, meaning it launches like a rocket, then glides at insane speeds, Mach 5 and beyond, straight toward its target. Now, think about that for a second. Mach 5, that's over 3,800 miles per hour, fast enough to outrun missile defenses, fast enough to reach a target before anyone can react. The moment a B-52 lets one of these loose, it's already too late for the enemy. This changes everything. But Boeing's HER pylons are the real game changer. The problem with slapping modern hypersonic missiles onto a 1950s-era bomber is that the aircraft wasn't built to handle weapons this big and heavy. That's where Boeing's new heavy external release pylons, better known as HER pylons, come in. These pylons will let the B-52 carry not just 1 or 2 hypersonic missiles, but up to 4 per wing. That's more hypersonic firepower than any other bomber in the world. This is huge because for decades, the B-52 has been able to rain down cruise missiles and conventional bombs. But now it's stepping into a whole new category of hypersonic strike missions. The HR pylons also mean the B-52 could potentially carry other advanced hypersonic weapons in the future, not just the ARRW. This opens the door for next-gen missile systems, ones that could be even faster, more maneuverable, and harder to stop. But why is the Air Force doing this? Simple. Hypersonic weapons are the future of air combat. And right now, the US is playing catch-up with Russia and China, both of which have been aggressively developing and deploying their own hypersonic missiles. China's DF-17 and Russia's Kinjal have already been showcased in military drills, and the Pentagon knows that traditional subsonic cruise missiles just won't cut it anymore. That's why the US military is investing billions into hypersonic weapons and the B-52. Yes, a plane designed in the 1940s is now at the forefront of this arms race. It leaves us to wonder, could this make the B-52 the deadliest non-stealth bomber in history? Think about this. A single B-52, armed with up to 8 hypersonic missiles, could strike targets thousands of miles away in minutes. It wouldn't need to get close to enemy defenses. It wouldn't need stealth. It would simply launch a wave of unstoppable weapons and let physics do the rest. Sure, stealth bombers like the B-21 Raider are designed for deep penetration strikes, but the B-52 isn't trying to be sneaky. It's a brute force, high-volume missile platform. And with these upgrades, it might just be the most dangerous bomber in the skies, stealth or not. The final takeaway. The B-52 is proving that age is just a number. With AGM-183A ARRWs, Boeing's new HR pylons, and a role in America's hypersonic arsenal, this aircraft isn't just staying relevant, it's rewriting the rules of aerial warfare. And if you think about it, that's pretty incredible. A bomber designed with slide rules and drafting tables, now launching weapons that travel faster than a rifle bullet. If that doesn't prove that the B-52 is built to last, I don't know what does. The future of warfare is here, and somehow the B-52 is leading the charge. Incredible, right? I mean, we're already pushing the B-52 past its 70 years of service, and now the US is testing brand new B-52s that could fly for an entire century. 100 years! That's not just longevity, that's pure dominance. But the real question is, will it actually make it that far? The future. Will it fly for a century? Right now, the plan is to keep the B-52 flying well into the 2050s, maybe even the 2060s. And that's with a complete makeover featuring new Rolls-Royce FR-30 engines, advanced radar systems, and the ability to carry next-gen hypersonic missiles. These upgrades aren't just about keeping the B-52 relevant, they're about making it more lethal than ever. And let's be honest, if a bomber can still strike fear into adversaries after nearly a century, it's doing something right. But the B-21 Raider is the biggest twist yet. The US Air Force is pouring billions into this stealth bomber, designed to slip past enemy defenses and strike with precision. So, does that mean the B-52 is just a backup plan? Not necessarily. The B-21 is set to become the backbone of the bomber fleet. But the Air Force has already made it clear the B-52 isn't going anywhere. Why? Because stealth is great until you need brute force. The B-52 is the ultimate workhorse, capable of carrying more weapons than any other bomber in history. And when you're launching hypersonic missiles or nuclear payloads, sometimes you just need sheer firepower over stealth. But what happens when technology advances even further? Could futuristic bombers finally replace the B-52? We're talking about hypersonic aircraft, space-based strike platforms, and maybe even something straight out of science fiction. The reality is that no aircraft is truly invincible to progress. The B-52's adaptability has kept it alive all these years, but there may come a day when an entirely new kind of bomber will take its place. The question is, when? And here's something even wilder. What if human pilots are replaced entirely? AI-assisted drones are already making waves in modern warfare, and some experts believe the future of bombing runs won't even involve humans in the cockpit. Imagine a fleet of AI-powered B-52-style drones capable of striking targets without risking a single pilot's life. It sounds futuristic, but we're already seeing autonomous drones being tested for combat roles. Could this be the final chapter of the B-52, or will it adapt yet again? So, what do you think? Will the B-52 actually make it to a whole century of service? Or will next-gen bombers and AI take over before it gets there? Let me know your thoughts in the comments because this debate is far from over.